What's up, LinkedIn world? This is Randy Walensky here, coming to you live with another vocation venture. And this one is no exception, going to be amazing and awesome because as I've noticed, I've thought about doing this, and this is kind of what's happened, is try to get people that are super passionate about whatever they're doing. Like those are the people I want to talk to in general, and those are the people that I found to talk to. And so today is going to be no exception. Amina's here. She's a founder of a startup called Radious, and she'll talk about that. She'll explain it to you. And we're going to go into all kinds of different things. What's the startup life, passion, purpose, how you got here, and also the cool things that she's kind of doing to disrupt even the workplace, which I'm excited most about because that's an area I can't get enough of. So let's bring her on here real quick. Without further ado, what's up, Amina? Thank you so much for being
Hey,
here.
Randy. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to a fun conversation.
Oh man, I'm hoping that this is and I love doing it in the afternoon because it's like let's give them the afternoon wake up. This is your afternoon wake up call. Like if you're in a slump, you've got a couple options. Go do some jumping jacks, go run around the block, over caffeinate yourself in the afternoon, chase that caffeine high, and maybe tune in and hopefully learn something and get inspired. That's my goal.
That's awesome. Ready for it.
Yes. Well, so the coolest thing about what I've been doing or how I've refound you again is that you were coming into the Milwaukee market, which was so cool. Like just like, hey, it's this new startup. You're
Yep.
going to be offering services in the areas. That's how you first got on my radar. And then I just was watching all your content that you had on LinkedIn, and I'm like, what a great mix up of content. We could even spend half the time talking about that because I think your content strategy as a startup and as a founder is excellent. I really like it. You've got some things that are personal. You've got different types of formats. You do like a live webinar type thing, or like what we're doing. You do a LinkedIn live aspect. You have clips. Like you have a really nice mixture. Do you do all that yourself, or do you have help? Do you have a social media team backing you up?
Oh, don't I wish that we had a whole team behind this? I certainly have help. I definitely have some help. But something that you might not know is that I come from a video and marketing background. So before
Oh,
I founded Radius, I was doing film direction and consulting with companies on how to be more persuasive in mostly marketing contexts. And so, who would I be if I didn't walk my talk? Is kind of how I've been looking at it. But I will also say that I've only been active on LinkedIn for about 3 years. We founded
okay.
Radius during the lockdowns, and I started being a lot more active online, specifically LinkedIn, because we're building a B2B product. And so LinkedIn, out of all the social media channels, really makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no following because I was starting pretty much from scratch. And it's really evolved over the last 3 years. There's been a lot of testing and iteration, as you might expect from a startup. But because I have a video background, I definitely have leveraged video. And I understand not everybody likes watching videos. I know plenty of people who, their reading speed is three times the speed of actually listening to somebody talk. And so things like the use of transcripts or captions can be really helpful also for anybody who has disabilities and stuff like that. So there's so many different ways to engage online, and it's been a really fun few years in experimenting and seeing what sticks. And really nice to hear that you found it engaging. Thank you.
I think you're doing a great job. Now it all makes sense. But the skills that you're using to your brand, to be the representative, you're the spokeswoman, you're the founder, you are the face of the brand, and you're who people want to interact with. So I think it's awesome the way you're doing it that way. And I think it's great that you had those skills in your back pocket. I would say that marketing and sales are fundamental, foundational skills for anybody. We could make an argument for literally any field. You should know how to market yourself. You should know how to sell yourself.
Yeah.
You should know how to sell your ideas to other people. Like, sell other people to join whatever vision you have, even if it's where you're going to go on vacation, where you're going to go as a friend group outing, getting your kids to go to bed. Like sales and marketing are
Yep.
really important. But if you're a startup,
Uh-huh.
they're essential. Like that's a huge win for you in that you know how to get the message out. You know how to present what you're doing to other people. Like that's so important.
Yeah. It's a make or break, and not just on the the marketing and like customer acquisition side, which obviously
Mm.
is pretty critical to the success of a
Yes.
business, but also when you are running a venture backed startup, you need to be able to sell the vision to investors who are
Mm.
putting hard earned cash into your startup with the expectation that they're going to have a pretty hefty return at the end of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to sell a vision of a better future working together than not. And storytelling is mission critical when it
Oh, yeah.
comes to that. So, and Radius, out of the 5 startups that I've built over my career, is the first that is venture
Ah,
backed. And so
track record. You have
there's
a track record. I did not
a
realize that.
little bit, a little bit, but not in fundraising. That's the thing. That
Mm.
element of building Radius is it was completely new. Like I didn't even know how to spell VC when I first started. And
Venture what?
and now it's very 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 different now, but in the storytelling and marketing world, 101 is understand your audience. But when
Mm.
you're dealing with an audience that you've never spoken with before, you have to do a crash course to understand how they think about this and what are their motivations, and then how do you communicate your vision in such a way that taps into those motivations and what they really really care about. And so it's been like drinking from a fire hose, but that's part of the appeal. That's partly why I love startup life is
I was
there's
gonna say
never a dull
hashtag
moment and
startup
you're
life.
constantly learning. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Never
Yes. Oh,
boring. That's
I
for
love
sure.
your I even love your posts about that. Like that's what people need to realize is that your posts should always have a tie into business, but they can be personal. Like you had a couple great ones. You had one like how do parents even manage? Like how do working parents or startup parents like how do they do it? I don't do it. I've got a lazy dog over here. Like there's so many aspects of that
Shoot.
that are so
Yeah.
relatable and then it gets people having a conversation like that's a real like well I'm like exhausted trying to do a startup how do you even do that such a great question to ask
Yeah.
and then you had another one about your tennis career and what I liked about that is you tied it in you're like I'm doing a startup I have all this going on so it grieves me that my tennis game is suffering and I'm losing but here's why I keep doing it and here I'm like what a great way to tie in all these like life lessons and things but then give a
Mhm.
little view into your world like those were two really good posts. So again, I don't know, is
Thank
that
you.
part of your strategy? Is it a feeling? Do you go like, hey, I want to have a little bit more personal to my brand? Like how do you navigate what you should, contribute and what you should say?
Yeah.
That doesn't really fit here. I'm not gonna tell everybody about that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned over the last few years of being active on LinkedIn is that it's you're gonna have a tougher time if you're talking about a zillion different topics. Part of it is an algorithm problem where if the algorithm doesn't know how to categorize you, it's not really going to surface your post to as many people. But part of it is also just how humans work, and that if people know what sorts of posts to expect from you from a topics perspective, then they're they're more likely to tune in, and therefore you're going to have more engagement, and then the algorithm takes notice and then ends up sharing it more. And so, but at the same time, I didn't want to be one dimensional. I didn't want to just be talking about one thing over and over and over again, partly because that wouldn't be interesting to me. And also, I didn't want to sound like a broken record to people out there that were listening. So, after a little bit of experimentation, I landed on 3 topic themes that I would focus on LinkedIn. One is startup life. One is the future of work because we are building a product that is meant to shape how we work in the future. And then 3 occasional posts about tennis, but almost always weaving tennis back into some either life lesson or work lesson where it's then relevant to the people who actually really just care about the future of work or the startup topics. But I'm now weaving the tennis side into one of either the two of them. So it's still relevant for people. And I would say that from a cadence perspective, my posts are like the most visited topic that I lean into is the future of work. So most of my posts are about that, and then so if I were put a number about it around it, I would say probably 60%. I'm going to say about 60% of my posts are about the future of work.
Wow.
Uh, then maybe 30% are about startup life. And then I often try to weave something back into the future of work so it's not a complete departure. And then maybe 10% are related to tennis, which is just a huge part of who I am as a person and has
Yeah.
made me who I am today as a business person too. So it's relevant to startup life and future of work. Um, and so those ratios kind of change a little bit from week to week and month to month, but that's the overall cadence that I've gone with. And so far, so good. But,
Yeah. It's
everybody
not
has a different
random.
approach.
Yeah, no,
No, it's
what
not
I love
random.
about it, it's planned, right? It's organized. It's put into a way that makes sense. It's not just how am I feeling today? What do I feel like talking about? You've organized it in a way that you're getting a message, and it works with the algorithm. It works with your
Mm.
brand. So like everything I was seeing, you behind the scenes are like good because that's what I was going for. Yeah, so that's perfect.
But I will say that there is room for serendipity because there are some moments where I'm like, I don't know, I'm cooking myself lunch or in the shower and I have an epiphany, I have an idea, and I'm like, I really
Yeah.
want to talk about this right now.
Yes.
There's room for that because I do think that it is valuable to have a plan in communications in general, not just LinkedIn. But to your point about passion, is
Mm,
like people connect so much more strongly with ideas when the person communicating is really excited
yeah.
about it. And so if you're excited
Mhm.
about posting something, then do it, even if it
Yeah.
breaks the cadence or the editorial calendar just a little bit, because a lot of times those are the posts that get the most attention because of that excitement. So
Yes.
I don't know. What
People are
what have you
feeling
found?
that. People, no, you're nailing it. I mean, you're an expert in this area. People can feel your passion, your commitment, what inspires you. It's usually on topic that everyone else is talking about. It's the same. It's
Mhm.
like the what you're saying is most of your content is geared around the future of work. Well, everybody's kind of trying to figure that out. Nobody knows exactly what the right answer is, so people are interested. And then the people that align with what you believe, they want to hear more compelling arguments to go, well, why should we be doing this? Why are we doing that? Which I think, real quick, is a good segue into we're talking all about how you're shifting the way people look. You're out there. You're preaching to people like this is what we should be doing, and that ties into your business. So we got to at least tell people what is Radius. And I want to ask you this before
Sure.
you tell me exactly is of course for us regulars out here, us normies, we might go, oh, that kind of reminds me of Airbnb, but
Mhm.
for business, but for work, but for teams. Like, how do you like describing it? Because sometimes people don't want to be like, well, we don't want to be compared to them. We're trying to differentiate. We're trying to disrupt the market.
Sure.
Or you just say, hey, that's the easiest way for people to do it. We're taking that
Yeah.
model, but bringing it to new customers where that model doesn't serve. I don't know if I've summed that up, or tell me how would you want your brand to be portrayed in that
Yeah.
respect, as far as
It's a
getting it
bit of a
across.
double-edged sword because yeah, like using the Airbnb analogy is one of the simplest ways to explain it. Everybody, whether you use Airbnb or not, you probably know what it is. So it does make explaining it easier. At the same time, you're absolutely right that we don't necessarily want to be compared to Airbnb because at the end of the day, the product is very, very different. It's just that the analogy works for getting the idea across, initially. So the way we like to look at it and like to explain it is that Radius is offering an alternative to the stuffy, faraway office and recognizing that, I mean, the genie's out of the bottle, that people love the freedom that was afforded to a lot of them. A lot of us during the pandemic realized, hey, I can work just as effectively at home or at a coffee shop or outside in a park or at a friend's house. I can be just as productive and effective pretty much anywhere. And so why should I come into the office? Of course, that causes friction, especially if you work for a company that is stuck in an office lease. Because, of course, they're going to try to get butts in seats as long as they're making payments every single month for this mostly vacant office. Where Radious comes in is offers a third solution, because working from home is great for a lot of people, but some people feel like they can't escape distractions. They start to experience a little bit of burnout because it's hard to get work life separation. And it's also nice to see people in person from time to time. And it's a lot harder. You're not really going to have like a 10-person meeting in your own living room, right? And a lot of companies, therefore, are saying, well, then, okay, come back to the office. But people don't necessarily want to do that 5 days a week. For some, the commute is a really big barrier. And I think the number one thing is that people just don't want to be forced into things. Like, freedom and autonomy is kind of a big deal. And so this is my somewhat long-winded way of circling back to our solution.
Yes.
Because what we do is we offer effectively fractional office space. So it's completely on demand. That is in people's neighborhoods. And those two things are really important because, one, companies should not be paying for office space 7 days a week if their people only use it once or twice.
Yes.
And so what my crystal ball says about the future of work is that as lease terms approach expiry, CFOs are looking at those numbers, seeing
Yes.
that massive underutilization, and they're like, no, we can't renew this.
There's no
And we've
reason.
already started seeing the wave of non-renewals of these leases start to happen. Companies are either downsizing or they're completely eliminating their office space.
You had a
But
great
then how do you
post
get
about.
together in person? Right? Like, that still leaves that question. Those people who don't love working from home, or they just
Sure.
have a need to be in person maybe once a week, what do you do then? And so that's the problem really that we're solving, because what we do Airbnb style is we take homes, apartments, ADUs in people's backyards, basically any kind of residential property. We work with the homeowner or property manager to make sure that those properties are outfitted with workplace amenities. So everything that you would expect in a traditional office or a conference room, so whiteboards, sit-stand desks, AV for presentations, comfortable meeting tables. And we make sure that these residential properties have all this stuff and make them available to companies to rent by the day or on a flexible subscription. And the reason that's important is because now, if you're only using the office fractionally, then you're only paying for it fractionally. So companies save a ton of money this way. But what's really critical is the shortening of the commute, because people do not want to drive long distance to go to an office anymore. And because we're activating residential properties, homes tend to be in residential areas precisely where people live. And so if you can walk there or bike there or drive 5 minutes instead of 20 or 50 minutes sometimes, then we're reducing carbon emissions, saving people time, and saving people the cost of the commute as well, and just giving them like time back with their families. And so I am really, really excited to be building this platform, if you can't tell.
I love that. I was gonna comment, and then because I love your passion for it, but you had a great post about on Pi Day. You're like, here's the pie chart. You use the office 2 days a week, and you waste it 5 days a week. And I was like, whoa, hybrid doesn't make any more sense. Like, if you're hybrid, then you still have the same lease, whether there's people there or not. So if you're only bringing them
Yeah.
in, they're probably going to leave that environment, especially if they're looking at it, or they'll force people to go back into the office. So there's so many
Yeah.
things that. But so that was a great post. But the what you talked about there, and I've seen you explain it before about your why behind it. What I love about that, and what I think people can look at if they're thinking of starting a business, if they're thinking of changing a career, you have like 5 or 6 things that all coalesce together that you're passionate about. It feeds all these different areas in your startup. So when you are exhausted, when you are tired, it's mission driven. It's purpose driven. Not only am I helping people, I'm helping this. I'm creating a different type of connection. I'm looking forward and building a better future for employees, for everyone. Even like you said, the bean counters. Like I was thinking like the biggest thing that drives this, right, is going to be people that are CFOs, the financial people that say, does this make sense? How are we doing,
Yeah.
and how are we getting it? And there might be some HR people. What's going to be fun, I'll love you to weigh in on this next time too, is in maybe a week or two, we'll see. I have a gentleman who's a retention guru. And so he's all about HR, has been in it for tens of years. Is that a way you say things? He's been in it for decades, and he has a different view on it and looked at it. And that's what I want to see. Like, what are the ways that we can move forward? What things make sense? You have one perspective that you're 100% sold on. That's awesome. Like, that's what makes you passionate. Someone else can be 100% sold on something different. Whatever, go towards whatever you have, and then eventually it's going to all work itself out. Because like you said, if it's a good idea, if it's the right way to go, somebody is going to realize, hey, we're not able to recruit the people that we would like. Hey, we're not able to find the talent in this area. We need to go remote. If we're going remote for that, we're taking on all the effort it takes to learn how to manage remote teams. Let's go fully remote. Like, there's so many ways that you can look at it from a culture. And I think that's where Radious comes in. You still need human. There's like no denying the importance of people coming together and how important it is to build bonds, to break down silos between departments. Like, there's all kinds of things. And just even your coworkers, like, you have a better bond when you have camaraderie in the same place. And then you have where you have your digital world, and everybody loves that flexibility. So I don't know, I said a whole bunch. It's like a word salad for me to say, I love that you're so passionate about each piece that your startup and your business touches that's important to you personally, that allows you to motivate and gets you excited about working on it when you are tired and gassed and you're like, oh my goodness, or whenever there's the tough news that comes in, like, you're passionate about what you do.
Yeah. And, one of my teammates, Jeff, I love how he puts this. He says a lot of times intelligent minds can disagree on this. And to your point about, your colleague in HR, there are a lot of differing perspectives on this matter, which is why the industry is in flux right now, because there is a good amount of disagreement on how to move forward in the future of work. And of course, I don't think there is one silver bullet either. Every company has different needs. Every person within each company has different needs. So it's okay to disagree. In fact, we move the needle more if we can have respectful discussion around these disagreements, which is why when I'm posting on LinkedIn and when I'm interacting with other people's posts, I'm trying to foster a discussion where alternative perspectives are encouraged and that it's not just an echo chamber. Sometimes it's frustrating when somebody comes in with guns blazing and they make an argument for their side, and they do it in such a way that makes it feel like they're not malleable and that it's like their way or the highway. And but that's also okay, because if we listen to their perspectives and we can be malleable, then we can come together, I think, as a community, as a society, and take the best of all of these perspectives and then create a way forward. It doesn't have to be this us versus them. And in fact, let me add one more thing. With regards to returning to the office, I actually think that there's more agreement than there is disagreement, and we just don't realize it. And here's what I mean. Companies obviously want people to be together in person. They justify it with, serendipitous water cooler moments and culture building, innovation, and all this stuff. And I don't necessarily disagree. But here's the thing, is that employees, a lot of people actually want that too. They don't necessarily want to be cooped up in their home office in isolation for the rest of their careers. People do want to be together once in a while. They just don't want it every day, and they don't want to be forced. And so what's happening is abutting heads not around what people actually want, because both sides actually want the same thing. They're butting heads around the execution of it. It's
Yes.
the forcing people to commute long distances. It's the force part. It's the taking time away from their family without much justification, because if people feel like they can be just as productive at home as in the office, then is there a good reason to spend the time and money to go in, right? So what I think the world needs to do a better job of is fostering discussion, especially where there's disagreement, so that we can take the best of everybody's perspective and create a new way forward that is much more aligned. And I don't know, I think I'm really, really excited for all of the possibilities. I think that the pandemic spurred great opportunity for us to innovate, and I am
Yeah.
excited for the companies that are embracing that versus just trying to go back to 2019.
Man, I think that's your whole perspective. If more people and we all could all live up to that and did that for every other aspect of our life, we wouldn't have such a divide on politics and things. There shouldn't be so much
Yeah,
teams
that
when
too.
we're all essentially on the same team and we all essentially want the same thing. Most people just want to take care of their family. They want to be left alone. They want to have good times with their friends. They want to have the opportunity for prosperity. No matter what you vote for, you just think that that goes towards it. Same with a business environment. Everybody wants happy, productive workers. And then there's just a disagreement on how to do that. And then are people coming in with like, nope, dogmatic. This is the only way. It always worked this way. It worked great here.
Yeah.
If we want to fix things, we have to go back to that. That might be the wrong diagnosis, the wrong prescription for what's going on right now. But they're just like, well, we've changed things, so now we have to go back. How can we move forward? And how can we take the best
Yeah.
parts of previous? Because there's, as you've mentioned, and everybody reasonable, they know there needs to be some human interaction on a regular basis, and we all know the benefits of it because we all know the pain of having that taken away from us. And so, and like you said, there might be certain teams that, hey, for your team in our organization, it's not because of this. Like, or you're a brand new person, I need you to work with this person all the time and do this, and we don't feel it works as well remote, but we're not so shut down to it that there's no case for it. There's never a time
Yeah.
where that's going to be good. That you could absolutely have talent in a completely different state that you need to go, great, this is how we execute remote, and this is how we pull them into culture, and this is how we do it. We have them fly in and do this because we need them, but we also need them to be part of our mission. And maybe we just have concerns that that could be missing in a fully remote, and we want them to be tied to what we're doing. So yeah, and
Yeah.
there's you also your theory. I think I agree with your theory, which I've heard you put out a few times. I'd love to hear you talk on that, but just the idea of camaraderie, of autonomy, like having where people aren't forced to do things, but that they get to operate and they get to be trusted, right? We've seen things where people are
Yeah.
like recording keystrokes on their thing, and if they don't have enough keystrokes, they're getting fired, and so they're putting, I don't know, like their mouse in like a glass thing. There's like
Yeah.
they're fighting, and so they're getting pushback. But I would love to have you at least explain. I've heard you talk about it a few different times. Kind of your theory of motivation, of why people are motivated and what gets them motivated, and how we can look to have people happy and productive at work, because that's what we all want.
Hmm. Yeah. So I actually did my undergrad thesis on something called the overjustification effect. And what that is, if you've never heard of it, is that if you take somebody who loves doing something for the intrinsic value that it gives them. So something like learning, for example. Let's say they just love reading books and learning about new topics, and they just do it for the intrinsic sake of doing it. And then you give them an extrinsic reward for it, like money or grades in school, then you actually risk undermining their intrinsic motivation for it. And now they do it more so for the grades or the payment than for the pure joy of it. And the problem with that is we actually do our best work when we are passionate for intrinsic reasons, right? Nobody wants an employee that clocks in just for the paycheck. We all want to be working on teams where everybody is intrinsically excited to be building whatever it is they're working on. And Of course, we live in a capitalistic society where we do work in exchange for extrinsic rewards, right? In an ideal world, you get paid for the work that you are doing, but you can still leverage that intrinsic motivation. You can still that leverage is the wrong word. You can still fuel that intrinsic motivation by talking about purpose, by really living your values as an organization and being open about your mission and how everybody's contributions um, are are valuable additions to moving the needle forward. And that combined with autonomy being such a critical piece of overall well-being. And I could talk at length about self-determination theory. There are, three things that are effectively innate human needs for optimal functioning. That's how the researchers put it. And autonomy is one of them. So every time an employer forces people back to the office or forces them into anything for that matter, institutes any sort of a mandate, even if it's minor, if it is perceived as infringing on a person's autonomy, it risks having the effect of lowering not just their well-being, but their overall motivation, intrinsic or extrinsic. And it's damaging. And so every
Hmm.
time I see a headline about a company forcing things on people, especially in a context where they're being paid to do something that we really want them to be passionate about, that's a double whammy. And all it's going to do is destroy productivity and your culture. So, on the flip side, here's an opportunity for us leaders to recognize that the best people in our organizations are the people who love what they do and might even do it if they weren't getting paid. And bonus, they do get paid for it. And so let's lean into that excitement and let's fuel it instead of inadvertently extinguishing it.
Oh my
That's my view.
goodness. I love it. Preach, preach. I want to attend your TED talk. Like that was good. Let's go. No, seriously, you hit on so many good things because when you manage people in the wrong way, you can do the same thing. If it's, hey, you have to hit these arbitrary metrics that we haven't tied to anything in your mind, and you just feel like a drone or a cog in a wheel, or you're hyper specialized, you don't get to see the vision and the outcome, you get demoralized. I think that's the biggest, there's so many things in the modern world, but part of that is the way that we choose to work, which I think is the thing with startups. That's what's exciting, right? You get to be a part of everything. You get to make decisions. You get to have maybe the ultimate autonomy when you're creating something, and you get to see the fruits of your labor. When I was doing more speaking and training, I haven't done as much lately, but there were pillars that we had. This was specifically geared towards younger generations, which I think younger generations are the ones that are really pushing forward a lot of these ideas. And one of those things is autonomy. So I had a couple pillars. I'll run through them quick. Vision. Vision was one of the most important things. Every organization, every leader needs to cast a
Mhm.
vision, because if you don't know why you're doing something, you can't. It's hard to go through the drudgery of the work. Hey, I need you to update
Yeah.
Salesforce. Well, you know why? Because we want to do things better, and if you do this, then it's going to tie to this. Oh, okay, I'll take the
Yeah.
extra effort, right? There's growth. People
Mhm.
want to see growing opportunities. They want to be a part of meetings where they're growing and learning from the most senior people and getting to be better at their job. Everybody wants that. They're going towards it. So how do we create that opportunity? The second one was feedback, giving proper feedback. The next one was autonomy. I put such a big emphasis on autonomy because especially the younger you are, you don't want to be, lorded over, and you got to do this, you got to do it this way, you got to do it exactly how I want you to do it. And there's no deviation for you as a human or you to do it in a unique and special way. And what was fun about that one is I would tie back a quote all the way to General Patton. And he was like, don't tell people how to do things, tell them what to do and let them surprise you with their ingenuity. How old is
Mm.
Patton? How far back does that go, that has been true forever, even in older generations that might allow for more micromanaging, that might allow people in a more top down, just do what you're told for your paycheck and get out of here, and they could function that
Yeah.
way. It was never ideal. It never brought the most out of you. It's like, hey, tell me what
Yeah.
you want done and I'll figure it out. And I would love feedback along the way. Hey, I would love some mentorship if I'm doing things. There's a check in and balance. And then the other parts that I had to talk about was flexibility and balance. So it's kind of like a lot of our beliefs on this align in that everybody
Mhm.
wants to be as flexible as possible. And if they know,
Yeah.
even if they had to work in the office 100% of the time, but you cared about their flexibility, that's still a win. And then how can you be even more flexible for the business to align? How can the CFO look at it and say, hey, the more flexible we are, it improves our business, and here's how. Then that's where we're going to get people winning. Instead of having a war, it's like, how can we get interests to align? And we have
Yeah.
similar interests, but how do we then go, yeah, but my execution gets you, who you believe something different, it gets you what you want too. Oh, all right,
Yep.
that's cool. Right?
Yep.
Like that's I think a
Sure.
way that we can reshape is when we put things together that we're all looking for and we're open. You hit on it earlier. It's like anything, it's politics, it's family, it's relationships, being open to somebody else's ideas and letting them challenge you, and not being so tight gripped on like, this is how we always did it, this is how we're always going to do it. Like, let other people breathe
Yeah.
some life into your organization, into how you're doing things. So
Mhm.
again, that's like, I love getting to have these conversations with people that are passionate, and that we can bounce these ideas. It's just this is what it's all
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another quote for you that maybe
Mm,
you've heard. It's, fairly widespread by this point.
yeah.
It's a Simon Sinek quote.
Okay.
People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yes.
And now, when he first said that, I think in his TED Talk, or at least that's when I
Yes.
first heard about it, at least a
Hmm.
decade ago now, he was talking about a marketing context, right? If
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
if you're a company, you can lead with, well, here are products, here's why they're different, here are all of their features and benefits and stuff like that. But that's really the what and a little bit of the how. It's the brands that really have a lot of life and
Right.
personality and that you have an emotional connection with. They're the ones that are communicating the why first. But to your point, this is just as applicable internally as it is
Hmm.
externally. And so having that strong vision, the strong foundation of why we're doing this, so
Hmm.
that whether the task is easy or difficult, we are all on the same page about why engaging in this direction ties back
Hmm.
to our overall why. But then even having internal discussions about our individual whys, like, why are you, part of this team building this thing? And what are you personally getting out of it, given what our mission and our vision is? Um, just leads to far stronger alignment in the moment, especially if things are hard, but also in the long term. Also, extremely important when hiring. If you're communicating your why and you're talking with candidates about their personal whys and what they believe in and how they would like to engage in their careers, if there's alignment, then that's a good indicator that it's a strong fit to collaborate. But if you're open about those values and your why, and a candidate is like, well, actually, I see things differently. Maybe this isn't a great fit. Then we've saved everybody time, which is, everybody's probably most valuable resource. And so it's asking that question, but then also being transparent about it, I think.
Mm. That's probably one of my most favorite life-changing TED Talks, and I feel like that put TED Talks on the map. Now there
Hmm.
are TED Talks in every city on every subject and every whatever, but back then they were super special because the best of the best ideas, I feel like, were only on that one platform. And Simon said, I changed my whole life and how I communicate based on the golden circle, because it instantly resonated with me. And then even him tying it to, Martin Luther King or all these different movements where it's like, it wasn't like, hey, we got to do this because of that. It's, I have this vision and I want you to come and see
Yeah.
that vision with me and imagine what it would be like if we could do this. And it's like,
Right. Yeah.
that's what gets people moving. That's what gets people powerful. He brings up the Wright brothers, how they're the scrappy little entrepreneurs. Maybe you can relate. These scrappy little entrepreneurs trying to whatever, and how this other person was super well funded and perfectly situated for it, didn't create flight. But these scrappy little super passionate people making parts in a barn made this, change the whole world. So I absolutely love the Simon Sinek quote, and that's even why I think that you will do hard work, you will suffer for a purpose, for a reason. And so if you can communicate that on your teams, if you can communicate with that with your people, they'll run through brick walls for you. But if they're just a cog in a big machine, and whether they do something or not, and they're just getting a paycheck, you're going to lose people. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think everybody needs to think that way, because it's not marketing any more than marketing and sales, as we said at the beginning, are everything for that. You need to learn how to do those no matter what you want to do in life. It's about communication. It's about humans. It's about getting people to align with your ideas. And that's the best way to do it. You can't hit people over the head and say, hey, you need to vote for so-and-so, or hey, boom, you're going to do this. Or even if you could, it's going to be very short-lived, and it's at the cost of that relationship. But if you get people to go along with you, you have the influence and you cast the vision, then people will follow you. They'll be interested. And so, hey, that's social media, that's sales, that's marketing, that's everything, is getting people to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And for them, even without knowing, right? That's what he talks about in there. Like, it talks to this part of your brain that isn't verbal. It's like you just have a gut feeling. You just have a knowing. You're like, yep, that's it. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So tell us, how did you get so passionate? We haven't gotten yet all your backstory, and I thought I would get that, like, before you were doing this, or even maybe right at the startup, if you think that's the best story. Like, how did you decide this is it, burn the bridge? And another good example, you put a post out about how you're essentially become unemployable at this point. You're like, I couldn't work anywhere else. I can't work anywhere else. I can't go work under somebody else's vision, because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. It would be like, I don't know if you said this, but it's like, it would be a betrayal. Be like, I wouldn't be able to do it. I already have the thing. I got the thing I want, and I'm so passionate about that. And so many people are looking for that thing. So you found the thing for you. How did you get to the point where you had to find the thing, where you had to become that passionate, or is it all serendipitous, right? Did it just all coalesce into magic, or what was behind that?
I think you make your own luck.
Yeah, I like that.
But, and look, I shouldn't say that I could never get behind somebody else's vision. It's just that I never really have. Like, my whole career, I've just started companies and led them. I've been in a fairly privileged position where I could afford to take some risks straight out of college. In fact, my first company was founded in a dorm room in second year, I think. And so it was a little bit unexpected. Like, the life plan was not to be an entrepreneur. It was to go to med school, become a doctor, is a very prescribed. But without going into my whole life story, one company started in a dorm room that ended up being much more successful much sooner than anybody anticipated, ended up kicking things off. And over time, I learned that I am built for this lifestyle. As hard as startup life is, especially as an athlete, I'm basically trained. It's been drilled into me. It's in my bones now to have a level of grit and perseverance, because I started competing at a very, very early age, and started to experience those life lessons as a young kid. Uh, I am also very lucky that I'm in a position where I can chase after the things that I'm excited about. Uh, I don't have any secret sauce for how to find things you're passionate about. Everybody is excited about different things, and I think that makes the world a really beautiful and exciting place. There are so many things that exist out there that I don't have a whole lot of excitement for, but there's someone else that is obsessed with that thing, and they're moving the world forward. And so Um, I think that it takes a little bit of risk tolerance to make the decision, hey, I'm going to go after this thing. It takes some self awareness, it takes some self confidence to chase after these things because whenever you take a risk, there is a possibility of failure. And failure is hard. And if you've never really experienced that before, it is harder to handle than if you've put yourself into scenarios where you feel it repeatedly. And that's actually another reason why I'm so grateful for having a sports background, because it has put me, when you are a small fish in a big pond, you're going to experience loss more often than wins, and sometimes, and it toughens you up. You develop a tolerance to it that you can take with you into other aspects of life. So I'm a big fan of enrolling kids in sports and putting them into tough situations that they have to figure their ways out of. But you can absolutely do that later in life too. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur working for a bigger company, you can still be innovative and you can still chase after ideas. But it certainly helps to be in an environment of safety. If you work for a company that's going to reprimand you for failure, then it's going to be a lot harder to take risks and bring new innovations to the table than if you work inside of a company that embraces failure, that embraces experimentation regardless of the outcome, because they realize that the more risks you take and the more ideas you bring to the table and try them, the faster that company is going to grow. So part of it is having some self-awareness, part of it is having some risk tolerance, part of it is also being surrounded by people, whether in an employment aspect or family, friends, support systems,
Hmm.
so that you can have some psychological safety when you're taking these risks.
Yeah. Well, you said you didn't know the secret sauce, but I feel like you definitely said some ingredients there. Like if you want to try something new and you want to find your passion, you're probably going to need to be a little bit of grit. Like there's nothing you can pursue that it's always going to be roses and rainbows and sunshine. It's going to be tough. I don't know anybody who's like, I love every aspect of my job. They love a part of it. They love a part of what they're
Yeah.
doing, but the other part is hard. So you got to stick to it. You even said it's like you practice. So you practiced for years at failure and picking yourself back up because you don't win every game. You don't win every match.
Right.
You don't win everything. So once you can go, oh, I didn't die from that. I'm not made of glass. I'm not going to break. Just keep moving
Hmm.
forward. That's a good,
Yeah.
and maybe this would be perfect even more so for people who want to get into startups, since that's ultimately where it led you. But yeah, not everybody's built for it. Not everybody's built for the risk. I think not everyone's maybe built for being an entrepreneur, but as you said, you should probably be an intrapreneur wherever you go. If you work for somebody else, you should treat your occupation as serious as if you had all your money invested into it, if you had all your blood, sweat, and
Hmm.
tears and reputation invested in it, because you will be more successful and more alive and more passionate when you take ownership of something. I think the biggest tragedy is having people, like you kind of mentioned, just kind of punch in, just show up there for a paycheck. They're not happy and they don't do as good of work because they're not there to do as good of work. They're not fully alive. But if you can find a place that aligns with your values, even without you having to take all the risk, and you have all those pieces, and then you can pour yourself into it, and you're going on a mission, you're going on a direction that you agree that you want to go on, that's when you become alive. In this case, you had to start all your own visions, right? You didn't find alignment, or maybe you once got a taste for the freedom and autonomy and the creation of having a startup, that early and having success, that you're like, oh, I can do that again. I can succeed again. I know the formula. I kind of know what it takes to do it. I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to go through the pain because I know that it leads here. Did I
Yeah.
sum it up? I hope I've got, I hope
Yeah.
that's what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty darn close. And look, the first company that I co-founded, it was not really meant to be a company at first.
Hmm.
It was simply that, my co-founder and I, we just had a hobby. We loved photography, we loved shooting video, we loved basically the creative arts. And we decided one day that there was another topic that we were really passionate about, and we wanted to make a documentary about it. But when we looked at our bank account and we looked at our equipment, we realized, look, we've got no money. We have relatively little equipment. We don't have everything we need to make a documentary, that's for sure. And we also have kind of almost no experience. This seems like an uphill battle. So what can we do in the meantime to kind of get us to where we need to be? And so we ended up starting a business where we shot photography for family and friends and did videos and stuff like that. We shot some weddings and whatnot. And our rationale was, okay, well, every dollar that comes in as a result of this can be put towards upgrading our equipment and upping our game overall and learning new techniques and getting to the point where we can eventually make this documentary. And lo and behold, we found ourselves kind of with an accidental business that was doing really, really well. And so remember, a few moments ago, I said, you make your own luck. Like,
Yeah.
I do think that in business, I don't like to admit this because I like to think that I have some agency over my outcomes. But in business,
Mm.
especially in startup life, you cannot discount the importance of luck and timing. I hate to admit it, but at the same time, if you can make your own luck in the sense that you are poising yourself so that when the right moment comes, you are ready to pounce on it and take that opportunity. Uh, that's how you build. And and goodness, now I'm on my fifth startup.
That's awesome.
And
It wasn't by
two of the
accident.
previous ones, pardon?
I said it wasn't all luck and accident. You must have done a
No,
lot of agency to get 5 of them.
it took a lot of work. It took a lot of teamwork, I will say. But, two of them went on to be acquired, which was a little bit of a surprise because we never built them for exits. We built them because we intrinsically loved what we were doing and we just wanted to do more of it. And getting paid for it made it more sustainable. That was it. Um, so when those acquisitions came along, we were like, well, this is interesting because now those efforts can be amplified with even more resources. And actually one of them we walked completely away from and then ended up focusing our efforts on some other things. And two of the other ones continue to this day and are still, I'm still a part of two of them. I've just backburnered my role in them as I build Radious because speaking of luck and timing, when in the world of work has been a better time to build a solution for remote and flexible work? I mean, now is the time. And so how do you not drop everything and go all in when an opportunity like this drops in your lap?
Yes. Well, and
Can't
like what you
imagine doing
said,
anything else right now.
yeah, luck and timing, right? The timing wasn't right in 2019. The timing was really good after 2020. And you
Yeah.
already had acquired all the skills that it needed. So you saw an opportunity and you could pursue it. So you could call that luck. But what's the phrase? It's like the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's true because you get skills, things stack, and whatever you're working towards, you start paying attention to. Like that all goes to like exactly how your brain works in science. Whatever you're obsessed with, whatever you're passionate about, then you start noticing it everywhere, and you block other things out. So luck is like the word we say when we can't explain how it happened. But somebody, if they were recording our whole life, could go do 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 do. That's how you got here.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
it's just and every once in a while, of course, there is dumb luck. But you don't get success from dumb luck. Dumb luck is finding a $20 bill on the ground, right? That's dumb luck. And hooray, right? You could go, I don't know, buy some milkshakes or something. It isn't going to change your whole life. Like when you have a life-changing event of something happening that you might not know how it happened, luck is fine. But it's like
Yeah.
it is all about your work, or your work led you there, right? There's nobody that's ever
Yeah.
been like, everything just fell in my lap and I didn't do anything at all to make it happen. It's like they might
Yeah.
feel very lucky, but something happened. Even if it was like the way I responded to my parents led here, the way I responded with people. It's like you've gotten yourself into circumstances that have led you here. So anyway, that's such a cool
Yeah.
thing. And then I didn't realize you had such a track record, because that's what people look for, especially when they're investing. I'm sure your investors said,
Yeah.
well, what have you done before? Okay, here's the four other ones, and two of them got acquired. Okay, now you're a safer bet. So you wouldn't even have had that opportunity without the previous successes, in my opinion. Maybe you still could, but when people are investing, they
But it
want
would
to.
be an uphill battle, more so anyway. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
People don't like the risk of just like, I got this wild idea. I remember this one gentleman one time, this was a long time ago. I think we were both in our early 20s, but he had this idea of this business. And he's just like, I just need someone to give me like X number of millions of dollars. And I'm like, I'm not trying to rain on your parade, but people don't just throw money at you because you've got a good idea. You have to prove the idea, and you have to have reasons for them, because they're not just gambling out there with their money. Like they,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they are a little, but like at a very high educated level,
Yeah.
they're investing with a calculated risk, not just random throw money at you and hope for the best. Like
Yeah.
he wanted to get a bank. I'm like, definitely not a bank. Banks are definitely not out there going, ah, you got crazy ideas. We got money. Let's bring them together. Right. That's not how it works.
Yeah. No.
So yeah, and you would know even better than me. I've never raised capital. I watch a lot of things. I watch Shark Tank. Does that count? Like I watch Shark Tank, and I
Yeah,
hear
I really do think it counts. Yeah, I mean, obviously sensationalized, but it does. It's the fundraising journey is no less grueling than dealing with Mr. Wonderful. You're
I love
talking to
Mr. Wonderful,
people
by the way.
who
I
are
love him.
potentially putting millions of dollars behind your business, and so they're going to ask you the tough questions, and they're going to test you too, because they also recognize that startup life is full of trials and tribulations, and so sometimes they get you in a room just to rough you up and see how you handle it. Like it's
Mm.
at least that's how it feels sometimes. And so it can be a grueling process, but when back to what we were saying about marketing, and like if you are targeting the right audience of investors that understand your industry and ideally have even been there before. Maybe they are actually former founders themselves who have built something that's adjacent to the product you're building, and can offer mentorship, that can offer introductions. Then you're raising smart money. It's not just a check that they're cutting and then they wipe their hands and walk away. In an ideal scenario, you're dealing with people who truly get it and they want to be in your corner. Um, that's that's really when you've hit the jackpot.
Yes, and you have to do a lot to get into that room. And you're right, especially if they were a founder, they're going to be able to smell out somebody who doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the grit, doesn't realize how much it's going to take to do it. That's, I mean, even going back to Shark Tank, that's what I love watching about that, because the way they dissect what they think about it, and they're not always right, but the way that they do things and pull it apart is very interesting to see. I even had a different friend who's like, I want to put my idea on Shark Tank. I go, well, the first question they're going to ask you is, how much money have you made? He's like, no, I'm going to show them this other business, which is kind of unrelated. That I'm like, no, they're not going to like that. And that I don't usually rain on people's parade, but sometimes when they have like crazy ideas that they don't know at all what they're talking about, like I watch that show a lot. I can at least tell you every single time they want to know your numbers. They want to know this, because they're not taking risks. They're going, I can put fuel on this fire that's already burning. They don't want to come out there
Yeah.
with no proof, with no sales, just a crazy idea in a box and say, look, it's a prototype. Like it would have to be, or I said it has to have patents. It has to have all these different things. Like they want a sure bet. That's what investors, and I guess that would be a good thing. We're getting close on the time here. What time do we get? Well, the time went fast, didn't it? Went super
It did.
fast.
It really
What,
did. It really did.
rather
And
than,
look, I would be remiss if I did not circle back to one thing that you said, that if you found
please.
$20 on the ground, the first thing that you'd go and spend it on is milkshakes. Let me applaud you on this for a moment, because that is absolutely the first thing that I would go buy, to some form of ice cream dessert. So next time we see each other in person, can we please go grab ice
Ooh,
cream?
I'm sure the West Coast has got plenty of awesome ice cream places. Wisconsin is
Yeah.
no slouch on that either. So when are you coming
Well,
back to
yeah.
Wisconsin? When are you coming back to Milwaukee?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully soon. And I hear that the weather is starting to really get beautiful too. So
Finally
I
broke. We
I
got some
miss you
70s.
guys. So yeah, I've got to make it back soon.
I wanted to talk about that because I've heard some different things, but it's so cool that you have a West Coast brand, you're in the Bay Area. You're like, you know what? Let's also try it out in Milwaukee, right? Like Milwaukee, as much as I love it, it's a little gem hiding over here in the Midwest. It's not exactly a booming metroplex where you think of like a brand new startup is doing a test market in. But then people told me I can't substantiate this. They're like, hey, if it can make it in Wisconsin, it can make it anywhere because you have people that are averse to new ideas, conservative in a lot of respects with their money. They're very price conscious. So it's like it also could be an awesome test market. But yeah, I just well, we have to have you back as soon as you can. But yeah, what have you thought so far? What have you been your experience with? Compare the West Coast to Milwaukee with as far as entrepreneur startup? I know that's like a loaded question for the last couple minutes here.
Well, listen, it would have been, I would have had a very different answer like 2 years ago than now, because when we were first expanding, I mean, it was July 2022, I think, that we expanded into Milwaukee. It was our first expansion ever, right? We launched in Portland, Oregon, and then we're like, where do we want to go next? Our second city was Milwaukee. And initially, the reasoning behind it was that Milwaukee is almost exactly the same size as Portland from a population standpoint, and we're already seeing it work in Portland. Second thing is that Milwaukee has a lot of really great companies that are HQ'd there, and we are selling Radious as a B2B solution. We want companies putting their teams in our spaces on an occasional basis. We don't necessarily want to be going directly to the individual. Individuals can book with us, but it is really supposed to be a team collaboration tool. And so Milwaukee, God, like it has so many great companies that are there. That combined with some similarities in culture, but also some of the differences, we thought, yeah, like it's going to test our customer acquisition playbook to be in a culture that is a little bit different from the West Coast and thinks a little bit differently about the future of work. And then I went there because we had decided on expanding into Milwaukee without my having. I've been to Milwaukee like previously, like maybe 10 years ago for business for a completely other thing, but I never really got to know Milwaukeeans. And when I started visiting in 2022 and I started making friends quicker there than any other place in the world that I've ever visited, it opened my eyes to just how welcoming that community is. And I feel like I have lifelong friendships there now. Like, Radius or not, like whatever happens with this startup, I have relationships now in Milwaukee that are lifelong. And I am so happy about that. But, you know, bringing it full circle back to the business side, right? Because that's the personal.
Mhm.
And I just love
Mhm.
visiting Milwaukee so I can hang out with my friends now. But on the business end of things, it's so fitting to our mission because the entire point of Radius is to bring people together.
Mhm.
It's to build camaraderie among teams and to not be lonely working from home for our entire careers, but without force, without the mandates, without the long commutes. And so what better than to be expanding into a community of people who want to be there for each other, who are super welcoming, who are just
Mhm.
kind-hearted, smart, savvy people. It's just so fitting. And so I have loved every moment of it.
That's like a commercial. That's a commercial for Milwaukee right there. I've always said too, like Milwaukee should be both a startup and like a tech hub. Nobody's taken me up on this yet, but like the weather is we have right now, we appreciate the sun. We're like, oh God, thank you, Lord. I gotta get outside today. Like we appreciate it. But it has the weather
Yeah.
a lot of times where it's gloomy, it's whatever. Hey, it's work, it's whatever. It would be a great place for a lot of I think startups to be as far as well because it's not surfs up. We don't have the culture where like on the coasts a lot of times it's like I'm out of here, bro. It's not like that. It's like work is a big part of what we do. Hardworking people, people that are industrious,
Yeah.
and you hit on the biggest thing, being friendly. I mean, there's everywhere in Wisconsin is super friendly. I think that some of the most rural areas where I went and done speaking engagements, I was like, I would have never come here, but the people here are awesome. They're so friendly here. I love it. And so all over, I think Wisconsin people are friendly. Midwest in general, like there's the Midwest nice, like that's a real thing. We do wave at strangers that drive by us. Hey, how's it going? Like that's a thing. So
Yeah. But I do also want to stress that like there's nice and there's like really truly kind-hearted, generous nice. There's surface level nice and there's I want to truly be in your corner and have your back kind of nice. And that is what I feel when I visit Milwaukee. It's not just a wave. It's not just a nice to see you, Amina. It's a I have had new friends, but at the time, virtual strangers help me in ways that just were kind of unfathomable. That they would be willing to go so far out of their way, just out of the goodness of their heart for somebody that they barely knew. And that is why those friendships are going to persist. That is real value.
oh, I love it. That's it, Milwaukee. You did a great job.
Mm.
Well done.
Yeah.
We welcomed a
Yeah.
whole new company coming into our backyard, and we made like absolutely. That's awesome. I love it. I love hearing it. Well, I can't keep you all day. I promised you an hour. We're already over time, but I couldn't cut you off with that. That was amazing. That was such a
Yeah.
I've
Thank you.
absolutely loved it. Again, you're gonna see with this, and I'm always gonna have passionate people on here. You have been no exception. You're super passionate. You're mission driven. So I love doing it. We'll have to do it again as well in the future. Slightly different topic. Something crazy will happen in the work world. I'll have to bring you on as the resident remote employee expert culture builder. Does that sound fair?
That sounds great. I'd love it.
This has been great. All right, everybody. Hey, appreciate it. That's it for today. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off, before we let everybody get back to work? I'll
Just
give you
let's keep pushing for a better work future. That's it. That's all. Like we are just in the infancy of crafting this thing. So let's all work together, especially if we disagree on the way to make it happen. Let's have that respectful disagreement. Let's bring multiple perspectives together and let's create a future of work that is more passionate, more equitable, more profitable, and just better all around.
I love it. I love it. That was a perfect cap up. All right. Well, that's it for today. Absolutely appreciate everybody that tuned in, or if you're checking this out later, would love to hear your thoughts on it, anything that resonated with you, and also just what's important to you about this new world of work that we're in, because we're all shaping it together. So, hey, really appreciate it. Everyone have a great day. See you later.